I've accomplished everything I could do as an alcoholic. I've freaking seen the highs, I've seen the lows. What else was I going to accomplish?
I think you should locate your husband before you leave that foreign country, you know? Like, sage advice.
You never told me that.
I need to do this for me. Like, if I don't do this work for me, I am going to still run up against all of the things that are making this hard.
The most precious commodity in this world, which is hope.
Gosh, I was there and look where I am now.
Cried myself to sleep. Been writing songs about heartbreak, but that's the first time I actually felt it.
There's a reason for everything. There's not an excuse for everything.
I had to find out what I wanted to be about and who I was, what I'm even here for. Is it about making hit songs? I thought that's what it was.
I am worthy and I can trust myself. Being able to separate my love from what addiction is and how it can take anyone down.
Let's bring our guests in, Charles and Cassie Kelley. Thank you so much for being here. I know that this is a huge step of vulnerability. Y'all have shared your story somewhat publicly before, but hopefully we're gonna tell it a little bit in a different way today, and I'm excited to dive in. So.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanna lead with a little bit of gratitude because I feel like that's so important. So I want to say a special thanks to SoHo House for hosting and collaborating with us on the show, for Aaron Dugan and the Cast Collective production team for making our show look and sound its best, and finally for Promises Behavioral Health for believing in my dreams for this show and continuing to make it possible to reach countless lives, and providing what I believe to be the most precious commodity in this world, which is hope.
Amen.
Yeah. For those of you who might not know, this month is National Recovery Month. What we're doing today holds so much importance. It was so important for us to include Cassie because addiction is not just a singular disease that affects the addict or the person struggling with substance use disorder. It's a family disease. So I want to talk about that and set the stage. Addiction is often referred to as a family disease as it impacts not only the individual struggling with the substance abuse, but also their loved ones. For families to heal, it is essential to address these systemic issues. So let's dive in.
Yes.
I would love for y'all to say a little bit about why it's important for you to do this interview today, and to be open about your journey.
I mean, I think for me, again, I don't think when I first got out of treatment, I had some grandiose thought of trying to carry the torch of sobriety or anything like that. But I do think the more I've been into it, the more I feel like I've been able to have a small, at least impact on some people, and that decision to move through this journey and know that there's actually a lot of support behind it, and that there's some bravery in it. I think it's given me more of a little purpose that this is such a part of my story, and I think it's important for me in a very similar way. Even with the band, I think we feel a responsibility to give back. We do a lot of charity stuff. I feel like in a way with this sobriety journey, I feel a bit of a responsibility to at least be available to people when they need help, because I know it's, especially in our genre, it's not something I think that's talked about a ton. And so, yeah, I think for me, that's kind of the main thing. But again, I mean, I say this, Cassie, all the time. I don't think when I initially went into this, I thought I would be talking about it as much. But I think because I've actually gotten a lot of personal fulfillment and again, being in a small way, helping others, even as just maybe an example that you can still go out and enjoy it and thrive and hopefully, enjoy life even more than you did before without alcohol has been something I've really held on to and wanted to share.
I think for me, the statistics that you just shared about families and how it is a family disease of alcoholism, and the work that I think has been required of both of us to do in order to have the marriage that we have now, in order to have an intact family, in order to just both personally be happy and have that serenity through walking through addiction. I think for me, it's not talked about as much of like what, the vortex that's created when you're walking with someone in active addiction, like all of the things that start affecting you personally, and that you are going to need to do work in order to heal from those things. And so for me to be able to carry that message of like, okay, yes, your loved one is now back from treatment. They're sober. Everything's not going to be perfect all of a sudden. I think that that's the expectation of like, oh, well, it was just the drinking that was the problem. Like now that they're not drinking anymore, why are we still unhappy? I mean, I think for me, it's like, okay, well, sharing the message that like it also is on everyone around that person to heal as well.
Absolutely. That answer leads me to another question of, if someone had given you a bullet point of all the turns in the road and the choices that you were going to have to make, the things that you were going to have to face and heal yourself, with your family, all of that, at the beginning, because you talked about warning, like you don't have the roadmap, the warning at the beginning. But if you had those hard facts in front of you of all of those things you were going to have to do, what do you think you would have said?
Oh man, I think, I did kind of have that. I didn't have the roadmap, but when Charles was in treatment, the place where he went has a family week, and they have, family members who are willing come out and sort of also do therapy and, learn about the disease of addiction. And that was kind of first when it was presented to me of like, okay, you're going to have to do as much work as he is doing.
I think that was the most important part, probably, that completely changed the trajectory of our marriage and this whole journey was that week. Because I'll be honest, and I'm not ashamed to share, like that first 2 weeks I was there, I mean, I would, get to call her at the end of the night, and she still was like, I'm still not sure, that you might need to start looking for a place to stay. And I was like, whoa, this is real. Like, I mean, I'd never, cried myself to sleep until that moment, and it was like I told her, I said, it might've been the first time I actually been writing songs about heartbreak, but that's the first time I actually felt it. I was like, my heart's breaking. Like and she came that week, and she heard something that completely twisted her, or changed her perspective. And it gave her hope, gave me hope. And it was wild. It was like, I just remember kind of being like, thank you so much, God. And like for this moment, I don't know if you hadn't have been in there and heard that. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know what all y'all had, discussed, because we, it was separate. They would speak with the spouses and, the family members. And I don't know. It's wild because, again, I in a lot of the groups that I'm in, I mean, I hear stories where their significant others aren't doing the work, and I'm just like, wow, I feel so lucky that I have someone that, from the get-go pretty much was willing to do the work, and it completely changed. I think it's the reason we're still together, or that she gave me a second chance.
And speaking to that specifically, for me, when I heard that of like, you're going to have to do just as much work as he does, I was like really pissed off.
Were you offended?
Yeah. Yes. I'm like, I'm not the problem here, people.
Which is probably what most of the spouses would think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, but then for, truly like what I can only describe as like just God just changing my heart and my mind. And this was like, you know what? I had that moment of like, okay, whether or not I see him ever again in my life, I need to do this for me. Like if I don't do this work for me, I am going to still run up against all of the things that are making this hard because of who I am at this moment. So, that for me, like choosing that, yes, like doing this work has absolutely 100% contributed to us still being married, but it also was the choice of just like, all right, well, I can choose to do this work or I can choose not to do this work, but like it's only gonna hurt me if I don't.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of the path forward from then, like, all right, I want to feel better. So what do I need to do?
Well, and a fact that I think is so interesting that you early on, from what you were telling me, she was telling you, I don't know, the first few weeks. You talked about your counterparts in treatment and what have you, where their family members weren't participating. So the compare and contrast there for me is, in that moment, what did it feel like? And was there like a change in forced surrender almost, because you were like, it was a whole new level of, you go to treatment, you already feel like crap because you have to go to treatment. But then when you're getting these messages from your spouse while you're there, did it push you to a new place of surrender?
Man, I mean, I felt huge surrender even on the flight over there. I mean, flew to treatment. It was almost like people say when they finally, because I knew it was coming at some point. I really did. I knew something was going to push me to do this. And I just remember being like, oh, all right. I can kind of, like, it's happening, Lord, I'm in, and I mean, I didn't drink on the plane. Like all these people where they like took me in the first day and they tested for alcohol. I said, you're not going to get anything. I haven't drank. I'm ready for this. Like I've already surrendered. And then like I get in there and I'm starting to feel the spirit, the first week. I'm like, all right, this is going to be great. And then I get on the call with Cassie and she's like, I'm still not sure. And I'll be like all back over again, this like fear and stuff. And, but when she came that week and, that was when like hope and this whole new, I mean, it was amazing. I went from being kind of depressed to like, I don't know. It just felt like I had this new lease on life. And so I don't know. It was an interesting journey and still even coming back, when after treatment, we had some little roadblocks in there because I think the hardest thing for me was...
Wait, you mean after treatment you weren't fixed?
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me was like after treatment, trying to convince her that I'm really going to do it this time. And wanting her to like...
Were there times before that you...
Yeah, there was. And not just her. I mean, my bandmates have heard this a million times before too, people on my team, my manager. And so I think that was the hardest thing for me to realize how much damage and fear I had created with all of them. And they've all had to do work, whether it was particularly specifically related to me, but I feel like I had created a little bit, without knowing it, this anxiety of what guy is going to show up today in everybody in my world. I thought I was the fun drunk, that.
Well, and you probably were at one point.
But she got the brunt of it.
Until he wasn't.
Until you were.
I remember even when I got out of it, I was like, well, I said, my wife's the one I need to apologize the most. And they were like, no, you need to apologize to us too. And I was like, oh. And so it was, I just think you don't realize when you're in it how much damage you do. I feel like now we're going off onto a tangent, but all that to say, I did feel, it was a life-changing experience. It really, truly was. I went there, in my opinion, to save my marriage and to potentially get the band off my back. I'll be fine. But I didn't, and I knew I could probably stop drinking if it's what I had to do, but I didn't know if I was ever going to really buy into the fact that I'm an alcoholic.
And that's where I was getting to when I said a whole new level of surrender, because so many of us go into treatment or the recovery process with I'm at least stopping right now.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that there are different levels of surrender. And early on, for many of us, we're only capable of a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you say about 2 weeks in, because for me, I also went to treatment, and my burning bush spiritual experience happened. It was kind of forced upon me, but I had a similar incident, which was basically like when your support system, mine, started to give me signals of putting their foot down and saying no, really saying no to me for the first time. And that's why I was picking up on the rhetoric that you were sharing with me.
Yeah, because she had never said anything like that before to me, that I might not be able to come home. I was like, whoa, right, this is real. Didn't interrupt you.
No. But that's exactly what I was setting the stage for, is that it's like at that point you were preparing for that was paving the way for you to be at that place for the family work and what have you. So I want to go back just a little bit to talk about your music career. And I know that it feels like we're jumping around, but you got a lot of fans in the room and in the world. And I just wonder if we could reflect a little bit on your early days in Augusta, Georgia, how growing up in a musically inclined family shaped your career.
Oh man. I don't know. I always felt like music was around the house. You know, both my older brothers are such big, huge driving forces, I think, in my life. You know, and I wouldn't have moved to Nashville if it wasn't for my brother, Josh Kelley. He's a year and a half older than me. Then I have another older brother, John, who's about 10 years older than me. But like, we worshiped anything, John and my sister, Christy, you know, all the music that they would bring home and played in bands growing up. But I don't think I ever really thought it was a dream to become a professional musician. Yeah. And I think, you know, I got to see my brother Josh have some success, and I think that's what really maybe just even gave me the green light that there was the chance to be taken, you know. But yeah, I mean, I the minute I moved to Nashville, ended up calling my buddy Dave up and somehow convincing him to make some trips to Nashville, and he caught the bug and quit his job, and then fortunate enough to run into Hillary at a bar down here in Nashville, and I knew from the minute she started singing that she had one of the best voices, one of my favorite voices, and still does to this day. And so yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I will say my brothers are probably the biggest influences on my life. You know, of anybody more than my mom, my dad. It was almost like we worshiped my oldest brother John. He played golf and he would sing in some bands here and there, but we just wanted to, you know, I don't know, emulate him in so many ways.
That sounds so awesome, wholesome. I was gonna say, did you ever feel like they were trying to steal your spotlight? But
no. Honestly, I mean, I tell my brother all the time. I mean, when he got a record deal and started getting played on the radio, I mean, I was kind of jealous. I was like, wait, I was the singer in our band growing up. I was like, I want to be doing this, you know. And so he's always been my biggest supporter and you know, always would wave the flag. And I mean, he would let me get up at his shows. He was opening up for Dave Matthews. I remember like 5 shows one time, and he got me up to sing like a cover song at the end of the night. I'm like, I never would do that right now if I was opening up for Dave Matthews. Here's my brother in his khaki pants and polo shirt singing a song. But you know, all that to lead you though too, it was a big drinking culture also, and I saw my older brother and how he partied, and I wanted to be just like him too, and it's no shame. It was just it was just what I was around, and so, you know, I think we all naturally kind of gravitated towards that, you know, being the fun guy in the room, and I think I carried that on as long as I could till it stopped being fun anymore.
Yeah. Well, talking about like as you moved to Nashville and met your bandmates and whatnot, I'm curious how the early days of, you know, forming the band changed the trajectory of your musical career. Like when you reflect back on that, what did it look like from where it was headed?
Yeah.
And it obviously took a turn because of this.
It wasn't really heading anywhere. I hadn't been in town long. I was chasing some, you know, potentially a solo thing. I didn't know if I was going to do that or just become a songwriter. And I mean, the minute we started this band, we really started it just for fun. I started writing some songs with Hillary because Dave and I knew that we were going to be working together in some form or fashion, whether we were just going to be songwriters or not. And then we started writing these songs with Hillary just for fun. And I had this idea. I was like, what if we just do something for fun or as a side project? If it works, cool. If it doesn't, no big deal. Because she had a lot going on in town too. And so it was, I don't know, it completely changed the trajectory, I think, of my career. I mean, we had a sound, we had a thing, you know, and so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have to be honest with myself. I graduated with a finance degree at Georgia, and I, like everybody else that grows up or that goes to Georgia, it's like, all right, I'll move to Atlanta. I'll wear a suit and tie, go to work, and maybe on the weekends I'll hop up with a wedding band and sing Mustang Sally, and that'll be fun. But when I moved to Nashville, I felt like I was going to give this a shot, but I had to be honest with myself that if things probably didn't start happening within a few years, I don't know if I'm the kind of guy that wouldn't have wouldn't have said, all right, that was a fun try. Yeah. And so now looking back, I can't imagine not doing this, but I was pretty, it was definitely a huge turning point. Just moving to Nashville was a huge turning point. I completely changed who I was. I like turned off whatever that side of the brain is that it's completely all art focused. I don't, I laugh about that now. They're like, yeah, you got a business degree. I bet you're really great with all your finances. I'm like, I don't know what's coming in and out. I could be getting robbed blind. I blindly just trust that everybody's doing a job.
That would get in the way of your creativity.
Yeah.
So
exactly, that's what I said.
Who needs that? So was there a pivotal moment where you, other than the band forming, but like you said at the time, you were like, this is just fun. Let's see what see what happens. Was there a pivotal moment that things changed for Lady A?
Yeah.
And
I think writing our first single, Love Don't Live Here, I felt like we had a sound. And we started doing these shows at Third and Lindsley in town, and first week it's maybe 50 people there, just that would have been there regardless. Come back a month later, we had 100 people come back a month later, and things happened really fast after that. Once we kind of got going, we had to learn how to be on stage together. That was new for me too. Like, if you look at some of those videos, Hillary and I are literally just staring straight. Nobody's connecting at all. And so it was all really new. All of it was such a whirlwind. I think that's one thing I'm trying to embrace, which I think sobriety has been so fun for me, is trying to live in the moment more. I think I've always looked ahead. I don't live in the past. I don't live in the moment. I'm looking ahead. And I'm trying to get better at that. And but there's so many of those years, I do not remember half of it.
Yeah.
Dave and Hillary will remember most of it. I do not remember what I was like. I don't remember much at all. And I wouldn't say I was in some drunken stupor at all, because, I was, a big, I think, weekend warrior, but I don't think I was this like, everyday drinker like I had become. But I was not living in the moment. That is for sure.
Mm. I think that speaks to something we'll probably talk to later. The causes and conditions, the underlying stuff that we start to work on post sobriety. That's not the actual substance, Yeah. And but as we talk about that period of your life, I'm interested to know how drinking. Yeah, like what role did drinking play for you? I know you said that it was weekends. And that you didn't feel like you weren't drinking to the extent that you were towards the end. Kind of chicken versus the egg theory of how much environment and how much do you feel like was internal stuff for you?
Man, I think environment plays a huge role. I think I'd always been a drinker. College, but like if I had a big test, I wouldn't just do it, but like I think, I don't remember even when we started dating, would I come home and it was like, oh, let's make a cocktail.
Well, we didn't have any money either.
That's true.
So it was like, you couldn't just, to save up to like go out, and we were poor.
I think it's such a progressive disease, as you know. And you don't even realize it. Next thing you know, you're like, I would have big nights, but I wouldn't just always need a drink. But, golf was a big factor for me, where it was like, all of a sudden it was like, oh, I got a little money now I can join a country club, start playing golf. Oh, we're teeing off at 9. I always play better golf when I have a few cocktails first, so let's start doing that. Next thing you know, you've had 6 cocktails on the golf course. You come home, your wife wants to pop open a bottle of wine, let's do that. She doesn't know I've been drinking all day, or she can tell I've had, like the excuse, I had a couple beers. So it just was progressive. It was one of those things, I can't say when it got out of hand, but it just was a little bit each time, a little bit more. I think when I knew it was getting out of hand was when I was hiding it, because when my bandmates were like, you need to, I won't tell you to stop drinking, but we gotta tone it down a little bit. And Cassie's the same way. And I think that's when I was kind of like, this is weird. I'm like sneaking alcohol and lying, which then makes you lie about other things. Everything becomes a little easier once you start lying.
Which came first? Were you sneaking because they brought up your drinking being a problem?
Yeah. I used to not sneak it.
I think the other part is too, that I think about sometimes is like, Charles got famous when we were in our 20s. So when you're famous and you're like at the height of what you're doing, and you're like, oh, this is exciting for the first time, and like everybody's, excited to like celebrate, and there's so many things to celebrate, and we have money, and we're in our 20s. We don't have kids, we didn't have our son yet. That's like, well, why not? Why are who cares if we're hungover tomorrow? Like, we can sleep in, I mean, I think that part of that too is like when you're already kind of in your 20s and making those decisions just societally around, drinking. And then you're kind of, you're have it backstage, it's just always everywhere, and there's no reason kind of not to, and everybody else is doing it in the, around you, that I think escalates it to a place that if you are inclined to some sort of substance use disorder, it just can get there a lot faster.
Sure. Well, so that leads me to two questions. First of which, Charles, do you have a history in your family, genetic predisposition?
I think there is.
Your mom's dad.
Yeah, mom's dad. I think my dad too. It said on his side of the family, stuff we didn't talk about really. I mean, literally, I didn't even know, and I think Cassie had, kind of obviously asked and kind of found out a little bit of stuff, but no one talked about any of that stuff if it was. And was it one of those families like you only talked about the good stuff? I mean, even now I remember, even with my stuff, it was like, I almost think like even some of my friends were like afraid. They were like, oh, I'm so sorry you have to like be going through this. I said, no, this is a good thing, guys. Like, this is not, I'm not ashamed of this. Like, no one told me to tell everybody that, I quit drinking. I was like, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But even when I like said it, we were about to go on tour, and they're like, what do you want us to say? Maybe you need a mental health break or something. I said, guys, this is on me. I literally just went to treatment to become more honest. In the spirit of honesty, like, can we just tell people that I'm an alcoholic, and I was like, I don't want to lie anymore. I don't want to come up with things. I don't want people to think the band's breaking up. I don't think anybody, especially in this town that knows me, would have been surprised that I went to treatment. So yeah. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that wasn't talked about that much. And again, I think that's why I feel even more of maybe a responsibility to take a little bit of that stigma off, because this is not something I'm ashamed of. I'm not at all. I'm almost like, listen, it would have been a hell of a lot easier for me to just have kept drinking and blow my life up. Like, and not, to me, it was almost like, whoa, this thing that I thought was going to be so impossible to do, and I tackled it. I think I want to be a voice of like, hey, like, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
It really wasn't.
Same in my experience.
In my mind, I was like, this is going to be impossible. Like, I could do anything, but you can't tell me to not drink. Like, that's half of my life. And so, I think to me, it's amazing once you make that commitment, all the gifts that come from it. And in that same spirit of honesty, it's like, just being able to like be vulnerable. It's made me more vulnerable with my parents and my friends. And I feel like, I would have rather people not have gotten hurt along the way. But I thank God that something pushed me to actually start to like kind of look at life in a different way. I was missing so much of it. I didn't really know. I mean, I would say before, I was like, life was about capturing as many heightened moments as you could and stuff them in your memory bank. And that's what life is. And now I'm like, well, that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's great. And and I have those moments, but like, to me, I was missing all those little things that are so beautiful in everyday life, that aren't on the highlight reel, but man, that's what makes life great.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, the gift that we get, the longer we stay sober, the perspective of being able to look back at the ways that we used different behaviors to medicate. I'll say for me, one of them is that I always wanted to experience what I now would describe as joy or highs, like you said. That's what life was about all the time. And I talk about this so much in so many of my podcasts, but I love the Inside Out movies because they do such a great job of describing the basic human emotions and the importance of each of them. I think that's one of the gifts of sobriety and continuing our healing journey, is that we stop numbing
we stop seeking, well, hopefully we do, we stop seeking, only those things that give us the reward of staying on this same, which isn't normal. It's not natural for us to go on. There's always going to be a cliff where the highs have to end, whether it's caused by a chemical or you're doing only fun things, whether you're, receiving a ton of awards, the awards stop at some point. But, so I want to ask, as you were talking about commitment, I want to go back a second and ask you, y'all got together really young, and also married young. If we could briefly discuss, I'm curious how y'all met and what led to, falling in love and getting married.
It was fast.
We met one night. I was living in New York, and I'd moved back to Nashville, and I'd been back to Nashville for about a month maybe. And my little sister at the time was dating his former keyboard player, and they were going out in a big group one night, and she said, there was Craig Dunn was there at the time. He's in the audience. So they, and she invited me to come with them, and we all went out to a big group, with a big group that night. I was 23, I think. He was 25, and we went out to dinner one night, and he walked in the room, and I mean, we locked eyes, and that was it. We just kind of, for the rest of the dinner, we weren't seated by each other, but kind of kept just looking at each other.
It was the smoothest I've ever been in my life. I'm telling you, it was just I'm not kidding. Something came over me, this confidence, this something about it. I just was like, and I was like, I want to speak to this girl all night. And we were with a huge group, and we ignored everybody. It was just us two. We were at dinner at South Street, and then next door, which isn't there anymore. And then it was Layla Rule was next door. Oh, Layla. You gotta be in Nashville.
Anybody here remember Layla Rule?
I know. And so it was a dance club, and we went over there, and Charles, there was a guy who was really dancing on the dance floor, and he was like, I'm gonna go have a dance off with him, and he went out on the dance floor.
I was trying to make her laugh because I'm not a good dancer. I was like, look at this cheese ball.
Did these crazy moves, and then did the the real dance off move, and then he knocked over all these drinks on. It was just funny. We were, it was silly, and we ended up just truly talking for the entire night. Yeah. And I had just moved back to Nashville. I was still living with my parents. I hadn't moved into my own apartment yet. And I told my mom the next morning, I said, I think I met the guy I'm going to marry. Wow. And I was 23. So she was probably like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's a musician. Yeah. That's
and he didn't have a job. So there's that.
Yeah. And he's in $20,000 credit card debt. This is great.
Was she supportive in the moment?
Yeah. I think she was like, whatever, weary. But, and then we just his career, he wasn't signed at that time, but then, there was a lot of interest, and then his career kind of started taking off, and, we were dating. And then there was a period that, we broke up because I think he was like, all right, I'm on the road now. I gotta, what am I doing with this?
There was this thing where I was like, do I need to, I'm just starting this. Do I really need to be having a girlfriend with all this temptation around? And so that was an interesting thing. And I remember we broke up for what?
A couple months.
A couple months. There you go. A couple months. Felt quick to me. And I missed her so much. And I was like, okay, no, this is, and so from then on it was
and
committed.
He had been on the road this whole summer, the whole, months we'd been broken up, and he came back and he was like, I really want to talk about kind of the next, steps for us. And I'm thinking, he's like, about getting back together. We weren't even dating again, and he meant getting married. So it just kind of escalated really fast.
You went from a break to a proposal.
You basically.
That's one way to bring your
rope her back in. You gotta be bold.
So we got married July 2009. So we just celebrated 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
15 years. How many were good?
8. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
More than that.
8. We've had, honestly though, we've had some great, amazing adventures. And I wouldn't change any of that. I just when I look back, I'm like, we also had some great adventures ruined at the end of the night from too much drinking, and honestly, from both of us too. I mean, we were enabling each other. I took it to the next level, and it was just, but I look back at that, I'm like, gosh, think of how many nights that I don't remember that I remember. I mean, she's the only one that got it the worst. Like no one ever challenged me like she did, so no one ever got it back like she did. I mean, some of just those verbal arguments and say things that you're like, I said what the next day? I don't remember saying that, and so I think that's something that I'll have to just feel like I'll regret and live with and for the rest of my life about that kind of, just again, all these heightened, amazing moments that were ruined from drinking and saying things that it didn't feel like it was me,
Yeah. How did you reconcile how the culture of partying and that whole entertainment industry, especially in country music, and like what you're saying, you're both wrapped up in it, and it's more abnormal, I would say, probably not to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I experience that because I go to so many things here in Nashville, and so
it's the only drug that you have to explain why you're not doing it. Alcohol.
Yeah.
Which is really funny.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
I think justifying it for me, I could justify anything. I could justify in my mind. I didn't have much of a moral compass. I mean, even now like sobriety brought me closer to my spirituality. I think I definitely was probably more agnostic, if I had to be honest, where I was like, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. He, she, it, I don't know. And so this whole journey has brought me that, but I could justify anything. I could justify, oh, well, at least I'm not doing drugs. I'm just alcohol. Oh, at least I'm not doing this like so-and-so artist is doing. At least I'm not waking up in a bush. That's a real alcoholic. It's like, I'm a functioning alcoholic. So
did you ever wake up
in a bush?
In a bush or somewhere other than your bed?
Oh yeah, I mean probably
a bed, somewhere other than a bed.
Yeah, but I meant like it was. I would always justify every action I've had. Yeah. I still do to this day. It just feel like that was always something that, there was a reason I had to do this. There's a reason I had to get this drunk. Life's short. There's a reason. And so I don't know. It was interesting. And when you say that, I was really big at justifying all my inappropriate. Mm-hmm. To myself, lying to myself, all kinds of stuff.
Well, there's a saying, and I love it because it really helps me put things into perspective a lot when I have to hold myself accountable, that, there's a reason for everything, but there's not an excuse for everything.
That's well said. I like that.
And I think when, like, pre-sobriety, I don't know about you, I won't speak for you, but like, I know for me, I lived by there's an excuse for everything, and I'm entitled to those excuses, and you owe it to me to buy what I'm buy into what I'm feeding you. And it's crazy how that as time goes on, like the veil is lifted for us.
Well, I think as alcoholics, I mean, we talk about this a lot of the meetings. I mean, it's a narcissistic thing that comes over you. I mean, it's a very, again, you're taking the power and the minute you kind of you give that up, it's amazing the relief you feel also that comes with that. But I definitely had a serious ego, still have an ego, don't get me wrong, but narcissistic, like you're living in my world, take it or leave it kind of thought. It's like, listen, if you're not happy, I mean, there's a door, and it's like, whoa, that's just, I don't know. It's interesting looking back at it that was who I was, and I was so clouded. And so take alcohol out of it. I had to find out what I wanted to be about and who I was. That thank God I went through this to actually bring me to the guy I want to become now. And that's why I love when they call it like the gift of desperation. Mm-hmm. Something had to bring me closer to my spirituality. Something had to give me some sort of like kickstart to figure out what I'm even here for. Is it about making hit songs? I thought that's what it was. I wanted to make as much of a mark that when I'm gone, there's something left behind. Well, I'm gone. Nobody's like, I mean, I'm not going to be able there to enjoy what's left behind anyways. That's such a silly concept now that I think about it. Like I'm here in this moment and I want to enjoy this moment. And that wasn't how I thought before, at all.
I think for me too, part of my work that I have to continue to do every day is reconciling, what I allowed myself to live with and what I allowed myself to not stand up to and what I allowed myself to just stay in. And, that for me presents itself and it manifests in me not trusting my own decisions. And so that's something that I still work on every day in my own recovery of like, hey, I deserve, I am worthy and I can trust myself and I can make a decision and know that that's the right decision for me. But, that's part of my work too, is reconciling, the things that I didn't stand up for myself for.
Yeah. I think there's the tendency to, for both sides, to get to kind of like start to drown in shame, if we don't fight it. And for both people, and so, this is so many areas of life that, the whole frog in the boiling pot theory, the put a frog in lukewarm water and slowly turn up the heat. It doesn't know, and it's eventually going to die. But you throw it in a boiling pot, it's going to jump right out. And I feel like, especially in the family, I always hear what you just said. I didn't know until it was staring me in the face, and the consequences were a mile long. And so I'm interested about how you both would answer this. What were the early signs? I know you talked about some of the stuff that but it felt normal at that point. What were the early signs for you? And then I'd ask you the same thing. I think it's a very progressive disease. And, where the rubber really hit the road for me is when we became parents. And, I don't know if there's parents that are listening right now, but, when you're sleep deprived and you're, it's like, okay, well, I would love to get hammered tonight and, not and just sleep in tomorrow, but I have a baby who's waking up every, couple hours. And it's like that, I think for a mother, really, you're like, whatever shit I have going right now, like I have to show up now for this child. And, that for me I felt like that stared me in the face pretty immediately. And then, he really kind of was able to continue living the life that he was living. And so for me, that became more of like the stark contrast of like, we're not doing this together so much. And, I can't get as drunk and I have to be sober because I have to, wake up at 2 a.m. and feed this baby. And so that for me definitely became where I started to like notice it more. There were times before where it was like we would get into this big argument and it was like, well, that's not great.
And then I was thinking about even when you were saying that with the parent thing, and I would justify, because that's what I did. And it was like, well, listen, I'm around way more than my dad was. My dad worked 70, like I'm here with this kid all the time. I thought I was a great dad. I just thought, I was like, yeah, if I got a little buzz while I'm looking after him, but I'm still a great dad. We're out playing and doing this stuff. And, but I was going to say, I think what really though did it more was as we had, this child, as my career became a little bit more where it was like, we weren't out chasing. It was like, we got this career, we can take, we don't have to be on the road as much. I started going to the golf course more and I would drive home. And every time I drove home, she knew I was drinking and she would come give me a kiss and I knew she was smelling my breath. And I think that's where too she got really scared because it's like, well, Dad, you're a dad. Like not only could you kill yourself, you could kill someone else. And that was where I think this reckless behavior that may have even been tolerated before we had a kid was not tolerated then. And that's probably was our biggest sticking point. And like an idiot, like I couldn't get a Uber back, but I also didn't want to get an Uber back because I was like, then she's going to know I'm hammered. If I drive back, maybe she'll think I just had a beer or two.
That's
dangerous.
Sense
You know what I mean?
To a mind like
seriously,
ours.
I was sitting there going, I would have loved to have Ubered back, but I knew if I Ubered back, I got an argument waiting for me.
Logical.
Why are you Ubering?
Yep.
because I've been drinking, oh, I knew you were drinking again. Let's get in an argument, and see, and it's so silly how like looking at it now, but I don't know.
So that it sounds like that's when the hiding it, the attempts at hiding it started.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. When did you make your first concerted effort, or did you feel like there was a concerted effort before?
Small ones, maybe. The big concerted effort that I made where I actually did stop, and I really did for about 2 months, and I think she thought I did for about 3 months, but about 2 months I really didn't drink, was I, of course, was driving back. We were down in 30A, a little place in Florida, and I was at this little bar, could have been a half a mile from our place, and she was out of town with Ward. I went out, played golf all day, got hammered, went to this bar, and all my friends were like, oh, let me take you home. I'm like, no, I can't take you. Y'all can't take me home. Like my car, I got to get back there again. I'm so afraid of Cassie knowing I left my car there, like just crazy ways of justifying I got to get it back so I don't get caught that I've been drinking all day and all night. And I get pulled over, and the guy, I'm literally pulled over, and looking at it now, I'm like, how did this guy not arrest me? I'm so drunk, I get out of the car. Like I get out and I walk towards him, and I'm like, hey buddy, sorry, this is my house right here. It's literally right down the street. I didn't have a tag. I just bought this car that didn't even have like the registration. He was like, I said, oh, a business manager's got the registration, hadn't come in. He was business manager. What? And I said, well, I'm a musician. I've got this person. He goes, and he looks at the thing. He goes, oh, I know who you are. And he goes, get in the car. I'm taking you home. No consequences. But remember, I felt guilty, and I knew it was a small town. I said, someone's going to see me getting pulled over. I gotta come clean with Cassie. But also too, it scared me so much. It was the first time I gotten pulled over in the hundreds of times I should have gotten pulled over. And nothing happened, but I called her really late, and I said, I got to tell you, like, I'm done. Like I got to stop drinking. I know it's a problem. And I stopped for a good 2 months, and just, white knuckling, as they call it. I had no therapy, no recovery at all. And then slowly but surely, it's like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I'll ease back into this, and started easing back in it with beer and wine. That was my deal with her and the band. I was just going to do beer and wine. I got this. That was a big wake up call. Whew, thank God. And then slowly but surely, start sneaking just one little whiskey in there before the show. Another month, 2 goes by, not even sneaking it. I'm over the mic, or the talkback mic, talking to my tour manager. Hey man, give me another one of those whiskeys up here, and and it was like, here he goes again. And I almost think I took it to the next level.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you feel like, did you have a wow moment where you had some insight at any given points where the perspective persisted for you of realizing I'm the last man standing at the party, or I'm the everyone's giving me the message that I am the bar is me and everybody's down here.
Yeah, I thought I was a pro at it, man. I mean, I would brag. I was like, dude, I'm a functioning alcoholic. I'm the best. I'm the best at this. Nobody can do it like me. I had a couple moments personally where I was like, wow, you got to get it together, where I would be on the bus and not even like going out, but just like on the bus, everybody's in bed, and I'm pouring my 4th solo cup of Woodford, which isn't a shot. It's like 4 shots in the solo cup, watching, Peaky Blinders till 4 a.m. You know what I mean? Yeah. Good show. And I'm just like, I remember like looking in the mirror, like, and going, why? I'm about to be home in Nashville, and I know I'm going to feel like crap. And I was like, no more. Just one more. And I go back and get one more, and I'm like, wow. I kind of knew around then that like it had gotten to a point where it was like, it wasn't even fun. I knew I wasn't having fun, but I was like, I just got to have one more, just one more. And that was when, I kind of knew things were going that way. But it wasn't until a trip we had I got a couple friends in this room that were there on that trip where we were in Greece, and that's when the shit hit the fan. It was like, all right, he's going to like complete surrender. We've got to go.
Man. What was that moment like for you?
So, I mean, I put myself back in that place, and we were on a trip. I think there were like 20 of us. Some of my friends in this room, we were there. We were celebrating a friend's husband's birthday, and we had gone out this one night, and as I had done normally, was monitoring how much he was drinking, and just that hypervigilance of like, okay, is he pouring another one? Is he having another one? What's he doing? How can I, just anybody who's been in relationship with somebody in active addiction, you're trying to think 10 steps ahead of like, okay, what's he going to do? What's he going to, and
I know she's doing this, which is only making it worse and making you want to drink more.
And so we get in an argument about that, and like, we're having another one, whatever. And then I'm sure some words were said that were really unkind, and I got really upset, and I just said, I'm leaving. And, my friend, we got in a cab and went back to the house where we were staying in Greece, and just sobbing. I mean, I was sobbing to the point in the cab so bad that when we got out at the house, our cab driver got out and gave me a hug, and he said, I'm so sorry.
Oh my goodness.
You never told me that.
He was so nice. And I was like, oh, thank you. The sweet Greek cab driver. And then, the rest of our group was still at this bar in Mykonos, and I was like, all right, is he, who's got him? Who's in charge? It's like as if it were any of their responsibilities to be in charge of him. And he left. He left everybody. He turned off his phone, and nobody knew where he was. Nobody could get in touch with him. I mean, I was like calling, looking at our credit cards to seeing if he'd spent anything on there. I called my mom, and I was like, because she was keeping our child, and I was like, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm coming home. I'm leaving. And she said, well, honey, I think you should locate your husband before you leave that foreign country, like sage advice. But, finally at about, to a point where, I woke up some of my friends' husbands who were asleep and were like, I don't know where he is. They were like searching downtown Mykonos at 6 a.m. for him. And finally he turned on his phone at about 7 a.m. and called me to pick him up. So
I sound like a great guy right now. I told her, I said, just don't make me look too bad.
Well, but
this is what happened.
Important to see, not that we are laughing about this now, but there is hope on the other side of.
It is important to be able to laugh about the because there's healing, right? And there's a lot of humor in our F-ups.
There is.
And a lot of that is what reels people in that I'll be honest, I'm sure you've experienced that too. You tell your story, it's not sometimes not the solution that people attach to.
Right.
It's the
True.
It's the how bad was it?
Right.
And what was the dumb shit you did?
Yeah, for sure.
But if you had told me at that point, you're going to stay married, your marriage is going to be stronger than it has ever been, you're going to have intimacy that you've never had before,
exactly.
I would have said a big old fuck off, and
I think that's why we want to do this.
Yeah.
Because really, now that I think about it, to get back to it all, it's like, I'm telling you, the 180 that has happened in our lives, in our marriage, because we weren't intimate hardly at all. That felt like a chore. I remember, I hate to be like that. And then I was like, somehow we were able to flip and fall in love with each other again. Because if I'm being honest, there was so much about each other that we probably didn't really know or really ever dig into. There's a lot about me I didn't know. I was like, God, I never thought about life this way again. And so, I mean, there's so much hope in recovery, and it is. It's a hard thing to do, but I mean, it's just like there's so many blessings that come from it. And it's amazing that it's like if you can take this one thing out of your life, so many of the things that you were drinking to calm down actually go away on their own. All the anxiety and the fear that I was trying to drink away a little bit, I think it's amazing that stuff just naturally doesn't consume me like it used to, because by drinking I was just creating more fear and anxiety and lies and all kinds of things. So it's amazing.
But I love the saying of like, you can give up one thing in order to gain everything back in your life, or you can give up everything in order to keep this one thing. And I think, when you put it that way, it's like,
it seems like an obvious choice, but in the moment, if you had told me before, I mean, I told her friends, I was like, no one's ever going to get me to stop drinking, ever. Listen, I'll be fine. I'll move on. I'll find a new marriage. I'll find a bit like this right here in my hand. This is me. This is part of my life. This is my, and I mean, I literally probably would have thought that 4 years ago. Yeah.
I did too. Cassie, I don't want to close out without digging into this because it is so important. Regarding the family and your choices, what are some of the most significant things that you can tell us about when you started that journey in family week and forward? What was it? What were the things that you learned that changed you the most?
One stark thing that I remember is I was able during that family week to identify, again, this is just by the grace of God, I was able to separate the man from the addiction. All of a sudden I could see that these were two separate things, and this was something that was causing him pain too. And not just that he was this bad person who was doing these things to me and hurting me. And so that was the biggest thing of being able to separate, my love from what addiction is and how it can take anyone down. And then also, finding a 12-step recovery program for myself. I mean, I was terrified to walk into that room. And I was like, oh, it's just going to be people in here like complaining about these drunks in their life. And, it couldn't be further from the truth of what the gifts of, that recovery is.
When you talk about a 12-step program for yourself, could you just in your own words describe what that means? Because clearly you didn't also go to 12-step for sobriety. It was something else. Right.
I go to Al-Anon, which is, for families and loved ones of alcoholics. And, it is absolutely changed my life in every single way. I tell everybody, I'm like, everyone really should go to Al-Anon. It just, it's a way of being able to live a healthy life. But that just radically changed my life. And you've come to find like ways that you thought you were completely alone and God, I'm just doing this and like no one can possibly understand. And then you see that like literally everyone's story is the same. Like some of the semantics are different, but like everyone has been walked in those shoes. And just the kind of acceptance that you find in that room and the support you find in that room. And that, has also encouraged me to just be able to, share that when I can. And now when I see a newcomer walk in, I mean, I just see myself every time, and it takes me back there to like, gosh, I was there and look where I am now. And it's just so life-giving to see had the change that has happened. And I just want to I think every time when a newcomer walks into that room, like, you're so lucky to be here. Mm-hmm. Like, just keep coming back and this will change your life. And it has for me.
That's truly evident. I love that you mentioned connection, support, The third one just left my head, but the one that I wanted to ask you, the one that you didn't mention yet that I want to ask you about that I know that you dove into was the actual self-work. Mm. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that when you started that path of journey, that journey for you, that practices that you did either in therapy or from Al-Anon that transformed that process, that changed your behavior, your outlook, your perspective?
I think for me, I start the day with, reading different recovery daily readers. That's so important to me. I mean, that just like grounds me and starts my day. But it also is just continuing to know that the only thing that I can control is myself. Just that, we follow the same steps as Alcoholics Anonymous of, step one, that I'm powerless and my life's become unmanageable. And that I still sometimes have to remind myself, because there's moments where I know I know in my mind that, everything's quote unquote fine, but that my body will react in a way. For a while it was like every time he would come home from the golf course, but my body will still react in a way. And I have to remind myself of my recovery tools of like, listen, this thinking, I'm powerless over this, and this is unmanageable. And I just have to go back to that. And, so I have my recovery readers every day, and I just have to constantly go, I am powerless over, alcohol and people and things, and I can only control my own choices and when I make the best choice for myself and what is healthiest for me, that's the best choice for my life and for the people around me. So,
well, thank you for that explanation and that answer. And I'm going to bring it full circle back to the beginning when you started to say no to him, even in treatment, because you were making that choice that was best for you. And little did you know that was manipulating you in a positive way towards that new level of surrender, towards a potential reunification and a life today. Final thought, if you were to be selling to someone that may need, if you were to sell these choices to someone that may need it today, what would be your closing remarks or thoughts that you'd like to leave with that person or people that may be struggling? And I'd ask that both from you individually.
I think for me, I try to tell people that the more I've tried to view this as a new adventure, like this second half of life, that this is not a life without alcohol. I was like, I've done that. I always tell people I've accomplished everything I could do as an alcoholic. I've freaking seen the highs. I've seen the lows. What else was I going to accomplish? I've now I'm on this new path. I'm like, oh, cool. Now I'm like, all right, this is my midlife, like new adventure. And I think really, truly, like you're still going to miss certain moments. You're going to be like, oh, this probably would have been a little more fun if I had a drink in my hand. But then it's this weird thing that comes over you. It's like, oh, man, but like that, that's fleeting. So I think that all the new little things that you get into and that you discover about yourself and about what's available to you in this life is stuff that you truly probably would not have discovered or cared about if you were drinking. And so I think that there's a new adventure that comes with not drinking. It's just like, wow, isn't this cool? All of a sudden I got this whole different perspective that I don't know. I think that's something I like to share with a lot of people. Like, I'm not viewing this as like a life without alcohol. I'm like, holy crap, this is like all these new things I'm getting into. I mean, I started reading. I hated reading. I've read 50 books in the past 2 years. If you had told me I would be obsessed with reading in the mornings and at nights, I'd have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, new adventure, and that, and also too, I think the biggest thing that I learned is you have got to do it for yourself. Like, I was doing it to save my marriage. I was doing it to get my band off my back. I was doing it just to not implode everything. But the minute I actually said, oh, I want to do this. Like, I want to be known as a guy that people can rely on and trust and respect. I think that's when things actually, I really started enjoying it and believing that I could do this, is when I was doing it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
and naturally by doing it for yourself, you're doing it for others. Like, things will change.
1,000%.
And I think for me, it's just in the same way of like, gosh, whether, he had stays sober forever, we were one day at a time here. But whether he stays sober forever or doesn't, the work that I do for myself, I will always can and will be okay. And that a lot of times felt like I didn't have a choice. Like I was just at the mercy of whatever he was doing. And the reminder for people of like, no, you are in charge of your own life. Like you can, whatever choices he's making, like you can make choices for yourself. You do have choices that are healthy and that can help you to live your life in a happy life. I mean, I think that I wish I had known that sooner.
Yeah.
Of like, I don't have to just be at the mercy of all his wheelings and dealings,
Real quick, last follow-up question for that person who is the, partner or primary support person for someone active in substance use disorder. What would you say to them that they've resonated with what you've said? And what word of encouragement would you give them about like, what's the one thing you would say, do this first to get the ball in motion for yourself?
I mean, find an Al-Anon meeting, full stop, that there are people there that know your story and will see you and will know that will help you, that want to help you. I mean, you are not a burden for anybody. People want to help you. And, I think also for me, it was the very black and white of like, okay, I either have to stay married and be in this disaster or I have to get a divorce. Like there are a lot of choices in between that. It's not just that black and white, but I mean, it's supposed to be anonymous, but like I tell people all the time, like just if you can take a deep breath and walk into that Al-Anon meeting, like that's the first step for freedom for you.
Heck yeah. Thank you both so much for this. This has been truly
Patrick.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
And with that, I'll thank each of you. Some people traveled here tonight to be here.
Wow.
Mitchell and some others. This room is full of so many wonderful, special people. Truly grateful that you are all here in our live audience, and those of you who are tuning in. I'll close how I always do in reminding you that it's never too late to start loving yourself, and you're always only one decision away from a completely different life.
This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admissions center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.